In Michigan, 2 classes of National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permits are issued to cover stormwater discharges from industrial sites. The 2 classes of permits are general and individual. These permits are valid for a maximum of 5 years. If the applicant continues to require NPDES permit coverage, it is necessary to reapply 6 months prior to the expiration date of the permit. This generally involves completing a new application. This gives the Water Resources Division an opportunity to reevaluate operational, monitoring requirements, and effluent limits. Michigan has developed a strategy for scheduling permit reissuance known as the 5-year Basin Plan. This is a timetable for reissuance of permits based on receiving water bodies. A receiving water body is the surface water body that receives a particular discharge. The 5-year Basin Plan ensures that all permits discharging to a particular receiving water or watershed are reviewed simultaneously. A general permit contains the minimum requirements for protecting water quality and are not site-specific. A facility with this type of permit coverage would be authorized to discharge when they receive a certificate of coverage under the general permit. General permits for industrial stormwater are separated into 2 types depending on certain site conditions. Stormwater discharges not associated with special use areas, or stormwater discharges associated with special use areas. Most facilities will have coverage under the general stormwater permit not associated with special use areas. However, facilities with the following conditions mandate general permit with stormwater discharges associated with special use areas. Facilities with secondary containment structures mandated by state or federal regulations from which stormwater is periodically discharged to waters of the state. The facility is regulated under Part 201 of Act 451 as a site of environmental contamination or cleanup where known or potential impacts on surface waters are present. The facility has other activities or areas that may contribute pollutants to the stormwater for which EGLE determines monitoring is necessary, or the industrial sector has been designated a significant contributor to pollution by EGLE. Dependent on the special use area, the facilities will be required to submit either a short-term stormwater characterization study plan or benchmark monitoring compliance plan to assess the stormwater discharges. Both plans must be submitted to EGLE Water Resources Division District Supervisor for approval 6 months after the COC is issued. All facilities that have authorization to discharge stormwater as of January 1 will be responsible for the annual fee of $260. Stormwater invoices are posted in MyWaters by February 1 and payment is due by March 15th. If the conditions at an industrial facility cannot be properly managed by the requirements of a general permit, an individual permit written specifically for the facility may be issued. Individual permits are site-specific and contain additional requirements such as regular sampling, monitoring, end-of-pipe treatment, or effluent limits. There are 3 criteria to consider when determining if coverage is needed under the NPDES Industrial Stormwater Permit. First, determine if the industry is identified in the federal stormwater regulations. Most regulated industries are identified by Standard Industrial Classification, known as an SIC code, while others are included by narrative description. Once it is confirmed that the facility is a regulated industry, the next step is determining if there is a point source discharge of stormwater to surface waters of the state. Surface waters of the state include rivers, lakes, streams, county drains, and wetlands. The surface water that receives the point source discharge is called the receiving water. A point source is any discernible, confined, and discrete conveyance that discharges storm water into surface waters. Examples of point source discharge include, but are not limited to, pipes, ditches, channels, tunnels, conduits, or anything that conveys storm water into surface waters. In most cases, land graded to convey stormwater runoff across a piece of property would create a point source discharge of stormwater. At many facilities, stormwater is discharged from the facility into a municipal storm sewer system. It is important to understand whether the municipal sewers are separate or combined. In a separate storm sewer system, stormwater is kept separate from the sanitary sewage and discharges directly into a surface water body. The sanitary sewage, which also may contain industrial wastewater, is directed to the local wastewater treatment plant where it is treated and then discharged. In a combined sewer system, stormwater is combined with sanitary sewage and is directed to the local wastewater treatment plant. If all stormwater from the facility is discharged to a combined sewer system, stormwater permit coverage is not needed. The final step in the determination process is evaluating the potential for exposure of industrial materials or activities to stormwater. Industrial materials or activities include, but are not limited to, material handling, equipment and industrial machinery, raw materials, intermediate products, byproducts, waste and scrap materials, and final products. However, final products that are designed for outdoor use are not considered exposure. However, the final products stored outdoors cannot be mobilized by stormwater. Facilities without exposure may apply for an exemption from the stormwater permit requirements by submitting a no exposure certification application through MyWaters. To remain exempt from the stormwater permit requirements, the condition of no exposure must be maintained at all times, and the form submitted to EGLE every 5 years. If there is exposure of any industrial materials or activities to stormwater, stormwater permit coverage is needed. In summary, facilities must obtain stormwater permit coverage if all of the criteria apply. It is a regulated industry that discharges stormwater to surface waters of the state with exposure of industrial materials. In order to obtain permit coverage, the facility must be in full compliance with all permit requirements before submitting an application through the EGLE MyWaters permitting system. The facility must have an industrial certified stormwater operator listed on the application. In addition, by submitting the application, the applicant will be certifying that all the following requirements of the permit have been completed: that a stormwater pollution prevention plan, or SWIP, has been developed for the facility, that there are no unauthorized discharges from the facility, that non-structural stormwater pollution prevention measures have been fully implemented, and finally, that structural controls described in the SWIP are installed and operational. Once these requirements are completed, you may apply for permit coverage by submitting a completed notice of intent to the Water Resources Division via MyWaters.